Earlier, I did a video on the longest forced mate in a professional match. If you haven't seen that one already, you can watch that one here, but it got me thinking. What's the shortest checkmate in a professional match? Now, most of you may already know openings such as the Fool's Mate or Scholar's Mate, but if you don't, the Fool's Mate is a mate in 2 starting with F3 or F4, and black follows up with E6. Now, white has to make this critical blunder of G4, opening up this diagonal for the queen to come in on queen to H4 checkmate. A really great example of the Fool's Mate is when Alexandra plays against JSchlatt. You may have already seen the clip, but if you haven't, it'll be in the description below. Scholar's Mate is a little bit more complex, and it's a mate in 4. It's not the only mate in 4 you can do, but without a doubt, it's the most popular. This one starts with E4, E5, which is already much more common than F3. After that is queen H5, putting pressure on the F7 pawn and the E5 pawn. One of black's best moves is just to play knight C6 to defend the pawn and develop a piece. White plays bishop C4, putting even more pressure on the F7 pawn and actually threatening checkmate. If black does something stupid like knight F6 to try and attack the queen, then queen takes F7 is checkmate. If you ever find yourself in this position, black's best move is simply G6 to kick the queen out, or queen E7 to defend the checkmate threat on F7. Now that we've gotten those out of the way, it's kind of hard to picture a titled player falling for one of those simple traps. And aside from joke games, drawn games, or forfeiting after just one move, Magnus Carlsen, there isn't very much to go off of. Aside from even that, most GMs will resign before they even get checkmated, so I had to edit my search a little bit in order to find a professional game that wasn't a joke and there was a very clear victor, and this is what I found. There's an incredible story between 2 grandmasters in Paris, Amidi Gaboud and Frederic Lazard. They played a single game in 1924 and Lazard won in 4 moves. The game went like this: D4, knight F6, knight D2, E5, D takes E5, knight G4, H3 to kick the knight, and finally knight E3 where white resigns. They resign here because you either lose your queen after knight G to F3, which is white's best move, or it's a mate in 2 after F takes E3 followed by queen H4 check. White is forced to block with G3 and then queen takes G3 is checkmate. Or at least that's what they said happened. I know a lot of you are shaking your heads right now typing in all caps that didn't happen, and you are right. After more research, I found out that most of that story is just based on rumors or got lost in translation along the way. Tim Krabbé, a renowned journalist and avid chess player who loves to write about all these interesting things with chess, put out an article on his website, which is in the description below, and I highly recommend you check it out. It is chock full of interesting stuff that I'm going to try and do future videos on. But anyways, he goes on to say, nothing will prevent Gaboud versus Lazard Paris 1924 4 moves being published as the shortest decisive master game. Almost everything is incorrect about that statement. It was not a master game. White was perhaps not poor Gaboud. It was not played in 1924, and it was 5 moves instead of 4. What is true is that in his autobiography, Lazard gave a friendly game, amateur versus Lazard, played in Paris around 1922, which went D4, D5, B3, knight F6, knight D2, E5, D takes E5, knight G4, H3, and knight E3, where white resigned. He also goes on to say that here, H3 is not as stupid as a blunder as in the shorter version, because white could at least hope to gain a tempo after knight takes E5 and bishop B2. Krabbé also writes, amateur becoming Gaboud, and Gaboud the proverbial patzer, which is a bad chess player, was not Lazard's fault. He mentions a very strong player whose talent is done no justice by this game. In fact, Gaboud was a champion of France no less than 4 times. He didn't like this 4-move game going around with his name attached. And when in 1937, the British magazine Chess published it as the shortest tournament game ever played from a Paris championship, he protested his innocence. In the next issue, Chess answered he never lost any tournament game in 4 moves. Searching his memory, he recalls a Skittles, which is a very low-key, friendly chess game, no clocks, that he once played against Lazard, a game of the most light-hearted variety, in which his attention momentarily distracted by the arrival of his friend Mofang. He played a move which allowed a combination of this genre, but certainly not 4 moves after the commencement of the game. Rumor, he said, must have woven strange tales about this game. And I know this video has gone on long enough already, but I did actually want to give you guys the world's shortest recorded chess match. It's also on Tim Krabbé's website, and this position has been reached a couple of times on record. The first noted game is between Djordjevic versus Kovacevic in 1984, but the same thing happened to Vassallo versus Gamundi in 1998, more than 10 years later. The games also start out very similar to what happened in Paris. With d4 and knight f6, the game quickly transposes into the Trompowsky attack with bishop g5, followed by c6, allowing the queen to have access to the a file. Here, white plays e3 and unknowingly cuts off their bishop from defending the d2 square against queen a5 check, and black, without missing a beat, plays queen a5 check and forking their bishop after knight d2, which is white's best move. But here, white just resigns in this position. Krabbé also mentions another game between Moret and Haru in 1999, just a year later, where not only did white not resign in this position, but they ended up drawing the game. Let me know in the comments if there's any chess stories or interesting chess facts that you guys want me to do any videos on. I'm going to be going through Krabbé's site and just posting little tidbits and stuff like that, because there's so much interesting stuff on there. And as always, if you did like the video, please consider liking and subscribing. It really lets me know what I'm doing right or wrong and how to make the best videos for you guys going forward. I truly appreciate any and all support from you guys. I really just want to make videos, but I also want to make them the best that they possibly can be. So let me know in the comments what you liked, what you didn't like, and all that. And again, thank you guys so much for everything.